The early morning sun had barely filtered through the pine canopy when a series of heavy, commanding knocks echoed off my cabin door. 3 precise strikes, followed by a voice that rang with authority. "Sheriff's Department." "Open up." Mid-sip, my hand froze with the coffee mug halfway to my lips. I set it down slowly, already guessing the source of this unwelcome wake-up call. When I opened the door, 2 uniformed deputies stood firmly on my porch. And behind them, arms folded and lips curled into a smug smile, was none other than Denise Hartwell, the iron-fisted president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. Today she wore a crimson power suit, sharp as a warning flare, and pointed a perfectly manicured finger straight at me like she was pulling a trigger. "There he is, officers," she said in a syrupy voice laced with mock sympathy. "The squatter who's been trespassing on HOA land for months. I demand you remove him now." Deputy Thompson, the taller of the two, shifted awkwardly. "Sir, we've received a complaint alleging that you're unlawfully occupying this property. We'll need to see some identification and proof of ownership." I gave him a small, knowing smile and gestured inside. "Of course, Deputy. I've kept the paperwork close ever since Ms. Hartwell here started this crusade. Fresh coffee, by the way. Would you like some while I grab the documents?" Denise snapped. "Absolutely not. Don't let him stall. He's probably hiding or destroying evidence as we speak." Thompson raised a calming hand in her direction. "We'll wait right here, sir. Please bring the documents." A minute later I returned with a leather-bound folder. Inside were decades worth of records that told the real story. Thompson opened it, scanning carefully. I watched his neutral expression waver, then shift toward disbelief. Deputy Martinez leaned over to peek, and her brows shot up. "Ma'am," Thompson said, turning to Denise with new authority in his voice, "these documents confirm that Mr. Garrett's family has owned this land since 1952, long before Willowbrook Estates even existed." Denise's victory grin cracked, but she quickly recovered. "Those have to be fake. I have documentation showing this land belongs to the HOA." And that's where things started to unravel for her. "My name is Marcus Garrett. 6 months ago, I inherited this lakeside cabin from my grandfather, Walter Garrett. Known to most as Grandpa Walt, he'd been a park ranger for 4 decades before retiring to this secluded patch of paradise, bought with his World War II veterans' benefits. The property included a humble 2-bedroom log cabin, 3 acres of untouched forest, and over 200 feet of private lakefront on Crystal Lake. This wasn't just real estate. This was our family's haven, where I'd learned to fish, built campfires, and fallen asleep to Grandpa's tales of wilderness patrols and bear encounters. After he passed, I left my high-stress job in IT behind and moved here for good. The cabin was weathered, sure, but strong. I figured I'd fix it up, take on some freelance projects, and finally breathe easy. But I didn't anticipate Denise Hartwell, or the neighborhood just down the road. Willowbrook Estates was a sprawling development of oversized homes and oversized egos, built about a mile away 5 years ago. The place reeked of HOA control, lawn inspections, paint color approvals, and complaints about unapproved bird feeders. It had nothing to do with me, or so I thought. 2 weeks into my move, while repairing a few rotting planks on the dock, I heard a voice bark out behind me. "Excuse me, you can't just make modifications to HOA property without permission." A woman in flashy workout clothes strode down my private trail like it was a public sidewalk. Her tone screamed entitlement. "I'm Denise Hartwell, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA," she said, hands on hips. "This lakefront is under our oversight now. Any alterations need to be approved by the board, and you'll need to start paying dues. Only $300 a month." I blinked. "Ma'am, this property has been in my family for over 70 years. It's not, and never has been, part of your HO." She smiled without warmth. "That's not what our records say. I suggest you check the new county boundary updates. Things change, Mr. Garrett." "Not this land," I replied calmly. Unbothered, she pulled out her phone and started typing. "We'll see. In the meantime, I'm documenting this violation. You'll be hearing from our legal team." Over the following months, my mailbox turned into a war zone. Every week, I received thick envelopes stamped with HO violations, absurd complaints. My dock's color didn't meet their Willowbrook wheat standard. My grandfather's vintage fishing boat was an unauthorized structure. The trail to the lake wasn't lined with regulation gravel. Each fine started small and grew ridiculously steep, $50, then $200, then $500. I replied politely but firmly every time, enclosing deed copies and politely stating that their rules didn't apply. Their responses became aggressive, dismissing my documents and threatening legal action. Then came the final escalation. A letter claiming I owed over $8,000 in unpaid dues and penalties. If I didn't pay within 30 days, they said, they'd place a lien on my home. That's when I decided to dig deep. I spent days at the county recorder's office, sifting through maps, records, and legal filings. It was all there. Willowbrook Estates HOA was established just 5 years ago, and my cabin was never part of their original boundary filings. But something strange had popped up recently. A new document labeled Boundary Adjustment Agreement, filed right after I inherited the place. I requested a certified copy. The moment I saw the signature line, my stomach sank. According to the form, my late grandfather had signed off on letting the HOA annex the land just weeks before his death. But the signature was barely legible, shaky, and suspicious. He'd been bedridden at that point, barely lucid. There was no way he signed that willingly or knowingly. I wasn't just up against petty neighborhood politics anymore. This was something darker. And I was ready to fight. Just 2 weeks before my grandfather passed, a supposedly signed document surfaced, the signature neat and legible, despite him having been in hospice care, barely conscious for over a month. Something about it reeked of deception. I knew I couldn't take this lightly, so I hired Janet Morrison, a seasoned property attorney. As she reviewed the papers, her professional demeanor gave way to visible frustration. "This is fraudulent," she said without hesitation. "Your grandfather was medically incapacitated. There's no way he could have signed this." With that, we began assembling our case. But Denise, the self-important president of the local HOA, wasn't about to back down. Instead of waiting for the legal battle to unfold, she launched a barrage of complaints. She reported illegal structures, alleged environmental hazards, and even contacted Adult Protective Services with claims that I was living in unsafe conditions. Each accusation forced inspections and meetings with county officials. Ironically, those who came out found nothing wrong. One environmental officer even complimented the property's upkeep, remarking, "Your grandfather would be proud." Still, the constant disruptions were wearing me down. I couldn't focus on work, and the legal expenses were piling up fast. Then came her most brazen move yet, a formal complaint to the sheriff's office, accusing me of squatting on HOA land. That's how I found myself face to face with 2 deputies on my front porch that morning. Deputy Thompson reviewed my property deeds, and I watched as his expression hardened with every page. "Mr. Garrett," he finally said, "this deed is rock solid. Your family's held this land since 1952. There's nothing here that connects it to an HOA." Denise, standing just behind them, flushed with anger and shoved a folder into the deputy's hands. "Look at these. We have a signed annexation agreement." Thompson flipped through her papers, his tone now sharper. "Ma'am, why does this signature show a date just 2 weeks before Mr. Walter Garrett passed, when medical records show he was incapacitated?" She faltered. It was for the good of the community." The previous owner agreed. Before she could continue, Deputy Martinez stepped forward, hand resting on her belt. "Ma'am, we need you to come to the station and answer a few questions." Panic flickered across Denise's face. "This is absurd. I'm the HOA president. I have authority here. You have no say over private land that isn't under your HOA," Thompson said firmly. "And forging documents is a serious offense." They asked me to provide everything I had. Deeds, letters, and records of every false complaint. As they escorted Denise away, Thompson turned back to me. "We'll be in touch regarding charges." From there, the investigation unraveled a much deeper conspiracy. Detective Sarah Chun from the Sheriff's Fraud Division took over the case, and what she uncovered was staggering. Denise had spent over a year orchestrating an elaborate scheme targeting older properties that existed before the HOA's formation. Many were still owned by elderly residents or had recently passed to their heirs, easy targets. Her plan: forge annexation documents, bring these properties under HOA control, then used that authority to pressure sales or claim the land for so-called community benefit. My family's land with its exclusive lake access was the centerpiece. With HOA control, she could rebrand Willowbrook Estates as a premium lakefront community, inflating property values, including her own. Worse still, she'd already entered secret talks with a development firm hoping to build a private marina and boat club. The potential profits were massive, and as president, Denise stood to gain handsomely. But her undoing came from her own arrogance. Investigators found damning evidence on her personal computer: forged signatures, drafts of annexation documents, and detailed notes on her targets, including medical details about my grandfather. She had even practiced copying his signature, poorly as it turned out. With everything laid bare, the district attorney filed a slew of charges: forgery, fraud, conspiracy, attempted grand theft, and filing false documents. Each count carried serious prison time. The DA wasn't interested in leniency. They wanted the book thrown at her. The day she was arrested, people watched from behind drawn curtains as officers led her out of her pristine home in cuffs. But the legal consequences were only just beginning. The HOA board held an emergency session and immediately stripped her of her title and voting rights. The development company she had courted filed a civil suit for breach of contract and misrepresentation. The county sued to recover the cost of investigating her fraudulent claims. And several elderly property owners she targeted filed a joint civil suit seeking damages. Her once carefully managed image collapsed under the weight of the scandal. Legal fees quickly drained her savings. Her husband, blindsided by the revelations, filed for divorce. To cover mounting debts, she was forced to sell her home, the very house whose value she tried to inflate through her lies. By the time her criminal trial began, there was no fight left in her. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the threat of 2 decades behind bars, she accepted a plea deal: guilty to felony fraud and forgery in exchange for a reduced sentence. The judge, clearly appalled by her exploitation of vulnerable seniors and her abuse of authority, handed down 5 years in prison, 3 years of probation, and over $200,000 in restitution. She stood silently in the courtroom, her world crumbling as the sentence was read. The woman who once terrorized a neighborhood under the guise of leadership was led away in shackles, her empire of greed reduced to nothing.